We'll give it a result.
At the moment you're under arrest. Okay? I'm speaking of kidnap. There is a kidnap at this time. Okay? You didn't have to say anything, but no harm in your defence. You did not mention one question, something later on in court.
So we're here to talk to you about Sarah. Let me show you a picture. Do you know Sarah?
I don't know.
Okay. Sarah went missing. I'll show you some pictures of.
Welcome to a case that shattered Britain's trust in authority and sparked a movement that would echo across the world. This is the story of how a serving police officer used his position of power to commit an unthinkable crime, and how one woman's tragic death became a rallying cry for change. Sarah Everard lived the kind of life many of us recognize, ordinary in the most beautiful way. Born in 1987 in York, she was the kind of person who lit up rooms without trying. At Durham University, where she studied geography, friends remember her infectious laugh and genuine warmth. She wasn't chasing fame or fortune, she was building a life. By 2021, at 33, Sarah had carved out her place in London's bustling landscape. Working as a marketing executive for a digital media agency, she called Brixton Hill home. She loved running through the city streets, exploring green spaces, and like millions of others, she was simply living her life one day at a time. London can be overwhelming, but Sarah had found her rhythm. She knew her neighborhood, trusted her instincts, and had walked home countless times before. There was no reason to think March 3, 2021 would be any different. But evil doesn't announce itself. It wears familiar faces, carries official credentials, and preys on our most basic assumptions about safety and trust. The evening started like any other. Sarah visited a friend in Clapham, sharing dinner and conversation in the warmth of friendship. Around 9 p.m., she made the decision millions make every day, to walk home. Her route was familiar, well-lit, through areas she knew. She wore a bright green raincoat and white hat, her phone in hand, looking like any other Londoner heading home after an evening out. At 9:28 p.m., she called her boyfriend. Their conversation was unremarkable, the kind of casual chat couples have when one is walking home. It lasted 10 minutes, ending at 9:38 p.m. with promises to speak again soon. Sarah had no idea those would be her last words to someone she loved. CCTV cameras tracked her journey along the South Circular Road, capturing her steady pace, her phone's glow, the normalcy of a woman simply trying to get home. But at 9:34 p.m. near Pointers Road, something happened that would horrify a nation. A white Vauxhall Crossland pulled up. A man stepped out. He showed identification. He spoke with authority. Sarah Everard, a law-abiding citizen who trusted the system, found herself face to face with what she believed was a legitimate police encounter. She couldn't have known she was meeting her killer. Wayne Couzens seemed, on paper, like exactly the kind of person you'd want protecting society. Born in Dover in 1972, he'd worked as a mechanic before joining the Territorial Army in 2002. He became a special constable with Kent Police, then an authorized firearms officer with the Civil Nuclear Constabulary. By 2018, he'd made it to London's Metropolitan Police, eventually joining the prestigious Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Unit. He guarded embassies. He protected government officials. He carried a gun and had the authority to detain citizens. But beneath the uniform and credentials lurked something monstrous. On February 28, 2021, Couzens rented a white Vauxhall from a Dover car company. On March 3rd, after finishing a 12-hour shift guarding the U.S. Embassy, he didn't go home. Instead, he drove to Kent, collected the rental car, and began cruising through West London. He was hunting. CCTV footage would later show his vehicle moving aimlessly through Earl's Court, over Battersea Bridge, eventually reaching Clapham. He was looking for an opportunity, a victim, someone vulnerable enough to trust a police officer's authority. When he spotted Sarah Everard walking alone, he found what he was looking for. At 9:34 p.m., Wayne Couzens made a decision that would expose the darkest possibilities of unchecked authority. He pulled his rental car onto the pavement outside Pointers Court and approached Sarah with his Metropolitan Police warrant card clearly visible. In the middle of London's COVID-19 lockdown, he told her she had violated restrictions. He was articulate, official, convincing. Sarah Everard, like most law-abiding citizens, complied with what she believed was legitimate police action. Bus CCTV captured the moment she entered his vehicle, the last time she would ever be seen alive. Couzens drove over 80 miles to Dover, arriving by 11:43 p.m. They transferred to his personal car, and between 11:53 p.m. and 12:57 a.m., cell phone towers tracked them to the rural Shepherd's Well area. During this window, prosecutors believe Wayne Couzens raped Sarah Everard. By 2:34 a.m., he was captured on CCTV at a Dover petrol station, buying drinks. Investigators later determined that by this time, Sarah was already dead, strangled with Couzens' own police duty belt. The very tools meant to uphold justice had become instruments of murder. Couzens drove to Hoden's Wood, a secluded area near Ashford where he owned a small plot of land. He concealed Sarah's body in an abandoned refrigerator hidden among the trees, then returned the rental car at 8:26 a.m. as if nothing had happened. But his crimes weren't finished. He drove to Sandwich and disposed of Sarah's phone in a watercourse, destroying potential evidence. When colleagues noticed his distress in the following days, he asked to be relieved of firearms duty, claiming stress. On March 5th, he returned to the woods with petrol, attempting to burn the remains. 2 days later, he came back with builder's bags purchased from B&Q, moving what remained of Sarah to a nearby pond. Each return trip was a calculated attempt to destroy evidence, showing not panic, but cold premeditation even after the murder. When Sarah failed to meet her boyfriend as planned, the search began immediately. Friends, family, and strangers plastered missing person posters across South London. The Metropolitan Police launched an extensive investigation, analyzing CCTV footage and tracing phone data. Within days, detectives had identified the crucial lead surveillance footage of the interaction on Pointers Road and the white Vauxhall. The vehicle was traced directly to Wayne Couzens. On March 9th, 6 days after Sarah's disappearance, police arrived at Couzens' Kent home. At 5:45 p.m., they took him into custody. 40 minutes before his arrest, he had attempted to wipe data from his phone, the actions of a man who knew exactly what he'd done. The next day, human remains were discovered in Hoden's Wood. Dental records confirmed they belonged to Sarah Everard. During police interviews, Couzens initially denied knowing Sarah Everard. When shown her photograph, he maintained his innocence. Then, as evidence mounted, he concocted an elaborate lie about Eastern European gangs, claiming he'd been forced to kidnap women to pay off debts. Investigators quickly determined this story was entirely fabricated. On March 12th, the Crown Prosecution Service formally charged Wayne Couzens with kidnapping and murder. The case that had gripped the nation now had its perpetrator, a serving Metropolitan Police officer who had used his position to commit the ultimate betrayal. On June 8, 2021, Wayne Couzens pleaded guilty to kidnap and rape. A month later, he pleaded guilty to murder. On September 30th, he received a whole life order, meaning he would die in prison. But the sentencing was just the beginning of a larger reckoning. Investigations revealed that Couzens had a history of concerning behavior, indecent exposure incidents in 2015 and 2020, reports that were either ignored or inadequately investigated. An independent inquiry led by Lady Elish Angiolini concluded that Wayne Couzens should never have been a police officer. The report detailed systemic failures in vetting, a culture that dismissed red flags, and institutional blindness to predatory behavior within police ranks. Sarah Everard's murder sparked something unprecedented in modern Britain. Women across the nation shared their own stories of harassment, assault, and fear. Vigils became protests. The message was clear and unified. The system designed to protect had failed catastrophically. The case exposed uncomfortable truths about violence against women, institutional failures, and the abuse of power. It forced conversations about safety, trust, and accountability that continue today. Changes followed: new vetting procedures, better training, reformed complaint processes. But for many, these felt inadequate against the magnitude of what had been lost. Sarah Everard was more than a victim of a horrific crime. She was a daughter who brought joy to her family, a friend who enriched the lives of those around her, a professional building her career, a woman with dreams and plans and a future that was stolen. Her death became a catalyst for change, but her life was the real loss. She represented every woman who has walked home alone, every person who has trusted authority, every individual who believed they were safe in their own community. The most profound tragedy isn't just that Sarah died, but that she died believing she was being protected by the very system that betrayed her. Today, Sarah Everard's name represents more than a single case. It stands for a moment when society could no longer ignore the failures that put women at risk, when trust in authority was shattered by those meant to uphold it, when ordinary people demanded extraordinary change. Her story reminds us that evil can wear any uniform, carry any credential, and hide behind any authority. But it also shows us the power of collective outrage, the importance of systemic reform, and the courage required to demand better. Wayne Couzens will die in prison, but Sarah Everard's legacy lives on in every conversation about safety, every reform implemented, every woman who refuses to accept that fear should be the price of existing in the world. In remembering Sarah, we don't just mourn what was lost, we commit to ensuring her death was not in vain. We honor her by building the safer, more accountable world she deserved to live in. This is why we tell these stories. Not for entertainment, but for understanding. Not for shock, but for change. Sarah Everard's story is tragic, but her impact is transformational. And that, perhaps, is the most fitting memorial of all.